Hello everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Reading Closely. This is the first video in my series, Seeking the Great American Novel. I first heard the expression, the Great American Novel, many years ago when I was talking with a friend about this book, Lolita, by Vladimir Nabokov. And my friend remarked how interesting it was that a Russian had written the Great American Novel. Now, Nabokov had been living in the U.S. about 15 years at this point, so he was actually a Russian American. But be that as it may, that was the first time that I focused in on the expression, and ever since then I have paid attention to it and the way it's used, and I've followed this idea through the decades as a reader, and it's just intrigued me. So I thought that now that I'm on BookTube, I thought that BookTube would be a very interesting way to explore the idea with other readers. It's especially relevant to start this process in 2018 because it was 150 years ago in this year that the idea was first introduced. It was introduced by a writer, a fairly minor writer it seems, named John William DeForest. More often than not, I would say that I've heard this term used in jest. So, for example, somebody might say, yeah, I'll do that, but right now I'm writing the Great American Novel. Every now and then, you do hear it used more seriously when people take up this concept, usually without defining it, or defining it in a very vague way, and they proceed to nominate candidates for the Great American Novel. DeForest did define it in his essay, but since so few people read his essay, I think that the term has come to acquire additional meanings and nuances, and so I want to look at that whole array of meanings that have kind of accumulated around the expression, not just at the original idea from John William DeForest, but I want to look at the way that people nowadays use the term and the kinds of novels that they apply it to, and kind of extract or infer a more perhaps meaningful meaning. I should begin by saying that the idea itself is problematic, deeply problematic. In fact, each of its terms could be questioned and have been questioned and challenged. So the idea of greatness, right? What is great? What's great literature? And then there's the question of what's American. Of course, America, we know, defines a whole continent and not the United States as it's so frequently used. But beyond that, America is itself a profoundly diverse nation, and so it's hard to sort of talk about the American anything, the American character, the American identity, and so forth. It's very multifaceted, and that's in fact, absolutely inherent in the whole idea of the United States of America, the melting pot, and all of that. And then finally, there's the question of a novel. What is a novel? A novel is not a precisely defined form. We've all seen all kinds of variations on novels, all kinds of experimentation with narrative and so forth. So in other words, each of the components in the term the Great American Novel can be questioned and should be questioned, and that'll be a part of this process as well. At the same time, I still feel like there's something valuable about it, otherwise I wouldn't be engaging with the idea at all. The conversation feels especially relevant right now in 2018 when the United States has been in a kind of identity crisis, I would say. And in fact, the U.S. has been in some sort of an identity crisis for the whole of my life. But it seems to be reaching a new pitch, and there seems to be more than ever a kind of a soul searching that we're going through right now. I think also throughout the world, the United States may be viewed differently than it has been. I think it would also be interesting to think about this concept of the Great American Novel within a larger global literature context, to think about what other countries, other nations might consider their great national novels. John William DeForest, who wrote this essay back in 1868, he actually began by referring to other nations' great national novels. He mentioned, for example, France and Les Miserables as France's great national novel, and he was bemoaning the fact that the United States didn't seem to be ready yet to have its own great American novel. So you can see that really from the beginning, when the idea was first introduced by DeForest, he was already questioning it even as he was trying to articulate it. So let me tell you a little about the first several videos that I'm envisioning in this series after this introduction. I want to start by looking at the origins of the term and by really looking more closely at this essay by John William DeForest. I think it will be interesting to pick it apart. I've now read the essay several times and have a better sense of what he was trying to get at. The essay itself is kind of hard to find. I found a portion of it on the internet, but I actually had to go through interlibrary loan to get the full essay. And I will be sharing that with you in my next video in this series. In the video after that, I want to go through a number of the novels that are most frequently mentioned as candidates for the great American novels. And I want to think about what people mean when they are using that term in connection with these novels. So to give you a kind of preview of that video and to make some of this conversation a little bit more concrete, I've got a few of the books here that I've read and that are often mentioned as great American novels. So one early example is Herman Melville's Moby Dick. Perhaps the most commonly mentioned great American novel is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Another very often named book is Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, most of the novels that are most frequently mentioned as great American novels belong to the so-called canon of usually white, usually male authors. And of course, that's one criticism that has been levied against the term, and rightly so. But this is changing so that more and more I hear books like this, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man, being mentioned as the great American novel. Or a very common one, a more modern classic, Toni Morrison's Beloved. So it is a dynamic concept, and I think that that is just one more interesting aspect of it. So again, I want to spend a couple of videos looking at these various examples from the most commonly to the less commonly cited. And out of this, out of all of these examples, I want to sort of sift and winnow and again extract a meaning that we might find more valuable. And all along the way in this process, I'm hoping that other booktubers make their own videos or comment on my videos as we try to refine the idea of the great American novel. Once I feel that I've developed a reasonably useful working definition of the concept, I want to start applying it to some new novels, some books that I have not yet read, but that I have heard referred to as great American novels. Although we'll be getting into these questions a lot more deeply in my next couple of videos, one thing I do want to say from the outset is that in my observation, the term the great American novel is very rarely used in a nationalistic way. It's meant, it seems to be applied oftentimes, in fact more often than not, to novels that in some way critique some aspect of America, while sometimes perhaps embracing others, or maybe embracing American values, but having something to say about the degree to which those values are realized in the United States. Also, although people tend to use the term the great American novel with the definite article, right, rather than the indefinite a great American novel, Although people use it that way, I would say that most people don't seem to mean that there really is only one great American novel. I'm really curious about what the rest of you think about this term, novels that you think might qualify as great American novels, novels of other nations, other countries, other peoples that are great national novels for those parts of the world. Thank you for watching. I hope to be back soon with another video. I do have several series that I want to be working on concurrently, and so whether or not my next video will be in this series or in another series or not in a series at all remains to be seen. But I do plan, of course, to continue this series, and I look forward very much to what other people might have to say about this idea about the great American novel.